بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وما بعد. So yesterday we were talking about the sacrifice and which animals are permitted, some of the general rulings regarding sacrifice. And today, just briefly, inshallah, we will talk about which animals can be sacrificed, how many people those animals are sufficient for, and some other rulings regarding those animals. And this is all based off of questions that we commonly receive at this time of year regarding the sacrifice and the animals about the sacrifice. So the first thing is which animals can be sacrificed. So the animals that can be sacrificed are goats, sheep, cattle. So that's the entire family of cattle. So goats, both male and female, sheep, that includes younger sheep, which are lamb. That's cattle, so that's cows, bulls, all of that can be sacrificed, and camels. Right, all of both male and female, they can be sacrificed. The smaller animals, so the goats, the sheep, the lamb, all of these, they are sufficient just for one person, right, or for one sacrifice. So according to, I mentioned this yesterday, according to Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, one sacrifice is sufficient for one household. And according to Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, each individual must perform their own sacrifice. So whichever the school you happen to follow, the small animal is sufficient for one sacrifice. So either for one household, or according to Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, for one individual. And the larger animal, so they are sufficient for 7 people, right? So cows, cattle, and camels, these are sufficient for 7 people. The next question that we usually get is castrated animals. Is it permissible to sacrifice castrated animals? So a lot of us have no idea what castrated animals are. So that's castrated animals. This is a procedure that takes place that renders the animal incapable of reproducing, the male animal. So this is what castration is, right? And it is permissible to sacrifice that animal. And in fact, according to some scholars, it is preferable to sacrifice that animal because that animal is generally more expensive, right? The animal that has been castrated. And the reason for the animal being more expensive is that an animal lives to do 2 things, right? So human beings, they live for the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. An animal lives to eat, drink, and reproduce, right? So if by performing a castration on that animal, you're eliminating one of the 2 things that it has to do in this world, right? So therefore, all it now has to do is eat and drink, right? And if it's only going to eat and drink, then the animal is naturally going to be a bigger animal, and therefore it is going to cost more. And if you are going to purchase that animal, then it's just like you would be rewarded more for giving more sadaqah, the same way you will be rewarded for purchasing that animal and sacrificing it. So it is permissible, and according to some, it is preferable. As far as some people ask this question. Now, I've never been asked this question in this part of the world, and this is because we have no idea. We never see our animals that we sacrifice in this part of the world, right? But some people ask the question that can we sacrifice barren animals versus those animals, female animals, that have given birth, right? So both of them are permissible to sacrifice. Whether the animal has never given birth or whether the animal has given birth, it is permissible to sacrifice both. As far as the age of the animal, right? So the age of the smaller animals, so the smaller animals means the goat, sheep, lamb, all of these smaller animals, they must be at least 1 year old, right, in order for them to not to eat, right? So you can eat an animal that is any age, right? That's, we're talking about for the specific purpose of sacrifice, they should be 1 year old. Um, and So cows and the cattle family, these animals should be at least 2 years old, and camels should be at least 5 years old. Right? So smaller animals, 1 year old, cattle is 2 years old, and the largest, the camel, should be at least 5 years old. There is, however, a difference of opinion over here with regards to sheep, because sheep tend to mature quicker than goats and other smaller animals of that size. So a 6-month-old sheep, right, that looks equivalent to a 1-year-old goat. Right. So what is this? If you make them stand side by side, then in compare their size, then the 1-year-old goat, and if the sheep, so it won't be a sheep yet, the lamb looks similar to the 1-year-old goat in size, then it is permissible to sacrifice that animal. However, it is still preferred that all smaller animals be 1 year of age, right? So they should be 1 year old. There is a lot of rulings regarding defects in animals, right? So there are largely, unless you're going to the farm yourself to see the animal and to choose the animal, and then you're going to sacrifice the animal, this is something that it really serves no practical purpose for you to know about the defects of animals. So there are certain defects, if they are found in the animal, then they render that animal unworthy of being sacrificed. You can still eat it, right? You can still slaughter it in the name of Allah and consume the meat. However, there are certain defects that for the purpose of udhiyah, sacrifice, qurbani, those defects render that animal unacceptable and not fit to sacrifice on the day of Eid or the 2 days thereafter. And so if you're interested in this, you can ask me about it later, but because most of us, we don't actually go and choose the animal, therefore it's not really relevant to us. And anyways, even if you do go choose the animal, the farmers, they're usually aware of these defects, and they don't give you, at least if they're Muslim, they won't give you an animal that contains this defect, right? So that's there's a whole long list of them. As far as sacrificing the animal, right, it is mustahab that when the animal is sacrificed, that the knife, so on the day of Eid, you should wash that animal, right? Again, this is the ideal we're speaking about. A lot of us, our animal comes to us in a box, right, after it's sacrificed, and we have no idea where it was sacrificed and how it was sacrificed and who took care of it. But ideally, you should take care of that animal. You should wash that animal, you should bathe that animal, you should feed that animal, and it should not be taken to the place of sacrifice before its intended time. And other animals should not be sacrificed in the presence of that animal. This is inhumane, right? That to sacrifice an animal in the presence of that animal. And also the knife should not be sharpened in front of that animal. The knife that is used should be a sharp knife, something that does the job swiftly, and the requirements are the same as slaughtering anything else. You will invoke the name of Allah, and you will sever the windpipe and the arteries, and this is and you will allow the blood to drain, and this is how the animal will become halal and will become sacrificed. In addition to this, it is preferable that you are facing the Qibla when you do this, and since this is the sacrifice, it is mustahab. So now this is not necessary, right? It is mustahab that you make the intention, and you can even say the intention out loud, that this sacrifice, if it's on your behalf, this is on my behalf for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you're slaughtering it on somebody else's behalf, then it is mustahab to take their name, that this animal is being sacrificed with the intention of so and so, so. And again, this is mustahab, it's not necessary, but it is preferable that this is done. If you have the ability to do it, you should do it. And then all of the other rules, they are the same as the sacrificial animal, and all other animals, in order to make it halal. As far as what happens with the various parts of that animal, it is impermissible to sell any part of that animal once it has been sacrificed. So the skin, the bones, the hooves, the horns, whatever it is, you cannot sell that. You can use it for your personal use. So if you have the skin of the animal intact, and you again, the rear side of that skin is considered najis, so you will have to purify it, and then you can use it as a carpet. You can use it for something else, whatever you want to use it for. It is permissible for you to use that, any portion of that animal. It is also permissible for you to give that as a gift to somebody, and it is also permissible to give as sadaqah, right? So what happens, I don't believe this happens in this part of the world, but in many countries, what usually happens with the skin, it is given to madaris, or it is given to different places, and as a gift, and then they are then, because the ownership has now changed, they then sell this and use the proceeds to fund their activities. That is permissible, inshallah. And that's pretty much it as far as, yes. And sorry, last thing, the meat of the sacrifice, the animal that was sacrificed, what happens with that? So there is no specific ruling with regards to what you must do with that meat. If you so choose, you can go home and eat all of it. That is permissible to do. You can give all of it in sadaqah. That is also permissible to do. However, many companions, they were of the habit of keeping 1/3 for their own families, giving the other 2/3, taking 1/3 for the neighbors and friends, and acquaintances, and the last third was given as sadaqah, right? So again, that's not necessary to do, right? If somebody doesn't do that, they are not committing a sin. However, that that is the practice of many of the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You should consume some part of that meat, right? That is, and you should also give it to your family. That is why I usually say that, especially since the majority of the people sitting here are Hanafi, so most of us, we have multiple sacrifices inside our home, right? So that means that in a family of, if there are a number of adults there, or many people, they sacrifice on behalf of their children as well, which is permissible. There's nothing wrong with that. So we usually don't do all of those sacrifices right here in this part of the world. We usually do 1 or 2 over here, and the rest of them are sent to some other part of the world that is the most practical, and this makes sense, right? So you should perform at least one of your sacrifice, right, over here, because part of that, if you have the ability to do so, of course, right? So because part of the sacrifice is actually bringing the meat home and giving it to your family and feeding your family, right? So these the 3 days of Eid, right? They are ayyamu aklin wa shurbin wa bi'al, right? These are the days to eat, drink, and to enjoy yourselves, right? This is what these days are for, and this is what should be done in these days. And you should also remember those who are less fortunate, and provide them with some of this to enjoy as well. Here at the Masjid, every year we accept donations of that meat, and then those donations are then packaged properly and given to people who are members of our food bank, as well as other people who know that that meat is here, and if it is given to them as well. So that is that's the Masjid. It doesn't really, it's just a service that's provided, right? So these are some of the rulings of the animal that is to be sacrificed. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it on our behalf, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to fulfill this prophetic sunnah. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim.